On the afternoon of August 2nd, 216 BC, on a sun-baked plain in southern Italy, the Roman Republic suffered the most catastrophic defeat in ancient history. In less than 4 hours, over 60,000 Roman legionaries were systematically wiped out. To put that number into perspective, Rome lost more men in a single afternoon at Cannae than the United States military lost in the entire decade of the Vietnam War. Over 100 soldiers died every single minute. 80 Roman senators lay dead in the dust. One of Rome's reigning consuls was slain. Nearly 20% of the Republic's entire adult male citizen population ceased to exist before sunset. The man who orchestrated this annihilation didn't have superior numbers. He didn't have better technology. He was outnumbered nearly 2 to 1, operating thousands of miles from home, without supply lines. His name was Hannibal Barca. And what he executed on that dusty field beside the Aufidus River was so 2 years earlier, Hannibal had done what everyone in Rome considered impossible. He marched an army of 50,000 soldiers and war elephants across the frozen peaks of the Alps directly into the Italian heartland. In rapid succession, Hannibal humiliated the Republic. He ambushed them in the freezing waters of the Trebia, destroying 2/3 of a Roman army. The following spring, in the morning fog of Lake Trasimene, he lured 30,000 legionaries into a mountain trap and wiped them out. Rome was in a state of sheer panic. In response, the Senate appointed Quintus Fabius Maximus as dictator. Fabius understood that facing Hannibal in an open, pitched battle was suicide. He adopted a strategy of avoidance, shadowing Hannibal's army, cutting off his foragers, and refusing to fight. It was smart, but the Roman public hated it. They branded Fabius the delayer, a coward who allowed barbarians to burn Italian farms. When Fabius's term expired in 216 BC, Rome decided to end the war with brute force. The Senate raised the largest army in Roman history, 8 full legions combined with allied contingents, over 86,000 men. Command was split between 2 newly elected consuls, Lucius Aemilius Paulus, a cautious and experienced aristocrat, and Gaius Terentius Varro, a fiery populist eager to deliver a decisive blow. Because Roman law dictated that the consuls alternate command every single day, Hannibal knew exactly which day to pick for battle, the day Varro was in charge. Hannibal seized a major Roman grain depot at Cannae, forcing the massive Roman army to deploy. The battlefield was a flat plain, bordered by the Aufidus River on one side and low hills on the other. Varro looked across the field and saw Hannibal's 45,000 men. With merely double the infantry, Varro's plan was straightforward: deploy the legions in ultra-deep formations, creating a massive human battering ram to smash straight through the Carthaginian center. Hannibal anticipated this move completely. In fact, he built his entire trap around it. Hannibal deployed his forces in an unprecedented formation. The center. He placed his least reliable troops, Gallic and Iberian mercenaries, in a forward-bowing convex crescent, arching outward toward the Roman army. Hannibal and his brother Mago positioned themselves directly behind this line to keep the men from breaking. The flanks. Stationed slightly behind the center, hidden from Roman view, were his elite African veterans, disciplined heavy infantry armed with captured Roman mail and shields. The wings. On the left, near the river, Hannibal concentrated his heavy Spanish and Celtic cavalry under Hasdrubal. On the right, he placed his nimble Numidian light horsemen. Hannibal placed his weakest men where the Roman strike would hit hardest, and his deadliest troops where the Romans weren't even looking. At noon, under a blistering southern Italian sun, The Roman juggernaut surged forward. Tens of thousands of Roman legionaries slammed into the outward curve of the Carthaginian center. The impact was deafening. Just as Hannibal planned, the Spanish and Gallic center began to yield, but they didn't break. Under the personal leadership of Hannibal, the center conducted a fighting, step-by-step retreat. As the center stepped backward under immense pressure, the convex crescent slowly flattened. Then it began to reverse, curving inward into a deep, concave bowl. The Romans felt victory within their grasp. Shouting and cheering, rear ranks pushed forward, crowding into the center of the pocket to join the breakthrough. The Roman formation grew tighter and narrower, compressing into a dense funnel. Meanwhile, on the wings, Hasdrubal's heavy cavalry utterly routed the Roman horsemen along the riverbank. Instead of pursuing them, Hasdrubal showed remarkable discipline. He wheeled his cavalry around the entire rear of the battlefield and smashed into the allied cavalry on the opposite flank. With the Roman cavalry gone, the trap was ready to spring.
Suddenly, Hannibal's elite African veterans on the flanks stepped forward and turned inward at a 90-degree angle, sealing the left and right sides of the Roman column. Seconds later, Hasdrubal's cavalry came thundering into the open Roman rear. In an instant, 80,000 Roman soldiers were completely surrounded in a pocket less than a square mile wide. What followed was not a battle. It was an execution. The Roman legionaries were packed so tightly that men literally could not draw their swords or lift their shields. Those in the center could see nothing but the dust clouds and the terror on their comrades' faces. Slowly, methodically, the Carthaginian ring compressed inward. The heat was suffocating. Dust blown by the southern wind choked the men. Soldiers near the edge were cut down, and as they fell, the circle tightened around those inside. Ancient chroniclers record that some Roman soldiers dug small holes in the ground with their bare hands and buried their heads in the dirt to suffocate themselves rather than await the sword. Consul Paulus, refusing to flee on horseback, died fighting alongside his men. By 4 p.m., the shouting died down into silence. Over 60,000 Roman bodies lay stacked in heaps across the plain. Hannibal gathered 3 bushels of gold signet rings from the fingers of fallen Roman knights and senators and sent them to the Senate of Carthage as proof of his triumph. His cavalry commander, Marhebal, urged Hannibal to march immediately on Rome, promising that within 5 days they would feast on the Capitoline Hill. Hannibal hesitated. He lacked siege engines, his men were exhausted, and he hoped the destruction of their army would force Rome to sue for peace. Marhebal famously shook his head and said, "The gods have not given all things to one man. You know how to win a victory, Hannibal, but you do not know how to use it." In Rome, the news caused absolute hysteria. Women wailed in the streets, and the Senate declared a state of mourning. Yet, in their darkest hour, the Romans did something extraordinary. They refused to negotiate. Rome lowered the recruitment age, freed thousands of slaves to form new legions, and strictly forbade the word peace from being spoken within city walls. They returned to Fabius's strategy of attrition, bleeding Hannibal's forces over the next 14 years, until a young Roman general named Scipio Africanus finally defeated Hannibal on the sands of Zama in 202 BC. Hannibal won the great. If Hannibal had marched on Rome immediately after Cannae, could he have captured the city? Or was his hesitation justified? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. If you love deep, strategic breakdowns of history's greatest battles, don't forget to hit the subscribe button and turn on the notification bell. Thanks for watching.